Okay, everybody. Thanks everybody for coming and welcome to our second tasting event. It's great to see some familiar faces and some new faces. And a special thank you to Eric Flynn from JJ Corry and from Kevin Madden from West Cork. Andrew, Rob from doing the sound production technology side of things, and Carl helping with all the contact tracing with COVID at the moment. So without further ado, I'm going to hand you over to Kevin Madden from West Cork, who's going to go through his first three lots. So
Anyways, thanks for inviting us to present our support and the Trump's in the vote. So that's always good to hear. I suppose full disclosure for me, and I'm kind of extra proud to be here because I'm actually from Limerick. So hence the guy from Limerick presenting to West Cork. So it's all good. So it's good to be here. Thanks to Darren for asking us and just letting me some lads. Much we get to know each other. We hopefully do these. If it goes well tonight, we'll do it tomorrow. So good to be here, and thanks very much for asking us. Just a short presentation. It's because I suppose what I find, I'm a sales manager at West Cork. I do a lot of traveling abroad and a lot of key account work in Ireland. And a big thing now, whatever we're drinking is people to know the brand. You know, is that we don't just pick up there now to take a drink. We want to know who made it, where it comes from, and a bit behind it. Because we are kind of changing. I think we'd like to get drink for more experience than it rather than the old way. Then we're drinking to excess. I think so. We're on a good kind of a good curve in that sense. So West Cork Distillers began in 2003 from a three childhood friends, John O'Connell, Dennis and Jerry McCarthy. So what they did, they bought a second-hand schnapps still in Switzerland and started toying with that and messing around. The two McCarthys were fishermen, and John was a head of actually research development for Europe for Kerry Group. So the boys in fishing was kind of struggling. John had a good job. They came together and said, "Look, we can start." So think with this idea of creating a distillery. I suppose that's what they did do. And I said, start Union Hall. It's only population maybe less than 200 people, and it was in the back of Dennis' shed in Union Hall when they started that. So we'll see a few more sites, but I suppose from the three guys in the back of the shed, they've gone from there to we now employ 140 people, and we hope to have by the end of 2022 have 200 people employed, which we're now based in Skibbereen, which is I suppose massive from where it's come from and big plus for Rural Ireland. Since then, West Cork Distillers have been recognised for our innovative approach and critical maturing, distilling and bottling. So the finest craft Irish whiskey on the market today. So we're one of the few. I suppose we are the largest Irish independent distillery. So what that means that we're 100 Irish owned. We know, I suppose, big bracket like the other big brands that some of you might be aware of, French companies and whatnot. So I suppose we're proud to say that anywhere we go and where we are abroad, sent to 70 different markets, to say that it's been built through hard graft and guile and just through sheer hard work. So we're independent and we use 100 Irish ingredients as well. Next slide, please. Yeah, just next to there. So this just I suppose just shows that supposed from 2011, like the boys did start in 03, but I suppose you kind of saw a slight growth stage 2011. So from 2011 up until 2019, we've doubled our growth year on year. And even last year, we've held the same growth that we had in 2019. So even at the year of a massive pandemic, we've remained with a status quo effect. So that's not too bad. Even last year, we took on 30 extra employees. Like so, it's been good to us. I suppose just some of you may or may not know, like what we're doing here tonight is West Cork. That the West Cork portfolio is part of. It's our main brands that we sell, but we also do contract brands for other, what we call maybe drinks companies or retail chains and whatnot. And then we do a lot of, I suppose, vodka and gin as well. So when you see the 1.5 million, you get Jesus, the boys don't sell 1.5 million case of West Cork whiskey, but it's built in that figure. But I suppose it just shows like this scale. You can say like in the 8-year growth, it's quite extraordinary, you know. And it's just, I suppose, just the distilling and showing the bottom at Ireland. So we've gone from that site where we were, I suppose, Dennis's shed in 03. We then moved to a site in Skibbereen. If you know Skibbereen, there's across in Eurospare there. We had a site there, sort of there up to 2014 till we moved out to the Mark Road, Skibbereen. So we're on a 12-acre site out there now. And then on that site, there's 8 pot stills, 2 column stills, and we produce over 4 million litres of pure alcohol per annum. And then we have 3 further stills dedicated to gin. I suppose, or just to mention, our gin brand would be Garnish Island Gin. And then, for example, then what the contract gin brand we do, we actually make the 50 gram North. So that's, and then storing, we have 7 warehouses which are located in the site of the distillery and store 55,000 casks. Some of you kind of read this on the newspapers. We're in a bit of trouble with storage at the moment because we're gone so large. We have to either buy more sites for storage or else to go to a greenfield site and build that, because I suppose what we're trying to manage whenever the scale we are, and you see our product portfolio, we have to have enough stock to keep that demand, but also in a lot of markets, the age profile is what the consumer wants. So you have your 10-year-old, 12-year-old whiskies in the pipeline as well. So we're not, I suppose we will have 10-year-old maybe the next 2 to 3 years, but I suppose it's all about managing that, which is a tough task. And then bottling, we five bottling lines operate 24 hours per day, 6 days per week. Every hour is 2,000 bottles processed on site. So we do a lot of, we don't make it for some distilleries that don't have that facility. We bottle for a lot of distilleries too. So it's just this could be maybe said for a lot of distilleries, but I suppose in our whiskies, with fresh Irish malt and water, exclusive Irish grain. Again, we make it and bottle it at source. They say the climate we are down on the west coast of Ireland, down that south, very good climate for maturation. Triple distilled, not chill filtered, and wherever I suppose all the ingredients and all the what we put into what we produce, we try our best we can. I suppose we have a massive proud West Cork heritage in the distillery, so we can't get a West Cork, go to Cork, we can't get a Cork, go to Ireland, and then obviously with supply chains and whatnot, you know, you have to go abroad, like Lexington dotted pockets, and for every distillery we come from abroad. So I suppose the only thing we don't do so far is make the glass bottles on them. So we made it someday. Next, please. And this is just, I suppose, our current portfolio. It is kind of, I suppose, diverse to meet a lot of tastes and different broad selection of consumers. Like I suppose if some of you know the West Cork portfolio from old, we had 12-year-old and 10-year-old stock that we sourced from one of the bigger players in the market. And then we aged ourselves, and we aged that 12-year-old stock in rum, port, and sherry casks. But through demand, all the stock was depleted. So we've these single malt cask finish ourselves that are their own stock, the 4-year-old liquid. And we're tasting rum tonight, but we're also in the range. We've got a Calvados cask finish, which I actually bought in the car for a price tonight. And sherry, port, rum, and virgin oak cask finish. And then we've just got a bourbon cask single malt as well. Our premium blends. So if you're shopping in your local Tesco super and you've done stores, you'll probably see the original. They're a good bit. It's probably it's our entry level premium blend. And then we've got a stout and an IPA, which are relatively new. Well, I suppose we have maybe a year or two. And we've actually, I suppose, to keep in with the West Cork team, we've teamed up with, I suppose, we've sourced the IPA and the stout from Blackskin Sale. So I suppose going back to John, who was a R&D research development manager for Kerry Group, through reverse osmosis, which is taking the water content out of the IPA and the stout, which kind of you're glazing the cask with a kind of a syrup, and you're washing that through, and then we're putting whiskey on top of that. Just what gives you more different characters to the stout and the IPA. Then what you might have seen through the other final the blend with the premium blends is the black cask. So it's again a blended whiskey, and we just finished in a heavily charred cask for 6 months. And then if you flip to the other end of the line, we have to repeat the bog oak charred cask. We've tasted the bog oak later. We can go through that then, and also we're tasting the cask later as well. In the next few minutes, we're nearly there. How long is later? So these are just awards. Let's look. I want to run through them. I suppose one we're kind of proud of is John O'Connell won the Industry Entrepreneur of the Year award last year. I suppose I don't want to give too much away, but Eric might know too about awards. Like awards, a lot of awards are paid to play. Like so, that's why it said you have to pay attention to awards. So we don't enter a lot of them, but we do see the value because the consumer likes the consumer would like to see how would this whiskey fare out if it was in the award. So we are changing our tack on that, and we are into more and more awards of late. But we won't run through them, but I suppose every distillery gets something eventually. So now on to the good part. So we're starting off the port cask. So that's, as I mentioned, the single malt cask collection we have now. So it's a 4-year-old single malt, triple distilled, and so it's aged in first with bourbon casks, and it's finished with quinta de port casks. And I suppose, but the interesting part, we don't have the bottle, which is all poured into, it's all. But we've permission from each winery or distillery then to have their logo and name on the back of the bottle. So it just gives that extra layer of transparency, and I suppose then it goes back to part of the experience when you are at home or having a taste that you see where you know where it's made, aged now, so you can see where it's finished. So I'm not tasting because I'm driving, but like the guys here, Darren, you've done a taste notes brilliantly. So I suppose, and a lot of the taste too, it can be subjective because I've been to enough of different events and like I've been at different shows around Europe mainly, and people get different tastes. So like you can see there, what spice and nutmeg, black pepper in the nose, dried red fruit, vanilla and coffee. But I suppose, and if we go to the taste and the finish, if you're not getting all of that, doesn't mean there's something wrong with it. Just, you know what I mean? You might be getting one or two of them, but not all of it. It can be subjective. So that's what I always kind of.
So we're pouring tasting that one night.
Yeah. Yeah. 4-year-old. Yeah. Then we give 4 to 6 months into the bore casks. So I suppose it's like that. I suppose the demand has it that we have to kind of. So we'd love to leave it longer, but I suppose when we get the balancing act right, we will have. You can imagine you could have 10-year-old, like could be 10-year-old and aged it and then finished and went to the bore casks. So and then obviously the taste. Then you're going to get notes here, which are very good. Is sweet aromas of dried fruit and dark chocolate. Finished in dry grape and lingering sweetness of strawberries and cream. So we'd like to hear comments at home too. Let us know what you think.
What type of pork are they Tawny or vintage?
Tawny.
Tawny.
Yeah.
That gives a different flavor structure than the vintage ones.
So just for back home and just looking for you to send in as many comments as possible so you can answer them all. Let's see. Yeah.
No water. Almost water. Drink a bit of water and take a bit test for the next one.
I like that test. It's nice after. But it's kind of in your nose like that. Test it, right? On the test when you're there. The aftertaste of the taste.
Back the first one, and then you taste the back one.
So just another single malt we have. It's part of the Glengarry series. We also it's the bottle track cast. We also have the P chart cast. So it's a triple distilled single malt matured in sherry cask and then finished in a bog oak track cast for 4 to 6 months. So this is actually 5-year-old single malt. And the bog oak we salvage from the local Glengarry forest, and we painted it and built our own charring device on site. So that's going to be at home tonight. I don't have a video, but if you just go and Google West Cork charring device, it's interesting to see it because we built it ourselves and it's like an arm and contraption goes down and up and it chars the casks. So yeah, and I suppose the uniqueness of it is we kind of the bottle is different and I suppose the label is also yellow, so it's a throwback to the old bottles of years and years and years ago. This gets a great anywhere we taste this, it's a really good reception, and it's quite popular here in the Irish market as well. So if you want to pop that into the glasses, lads, are you ahead of me? So going by on the nose, spice, dried leather with sweet dried fruit undertone, So 10 a dried apricot, apples and pears, earthy tones and oily char. Yo, Sherry, 5 years, then the bog oak chart. And the taste has intense spice, malt and cracked pepper, spice, fruit juice, malt, coca, oak, fruit, and a little smoke.
So you've taken the.
Loads of different tastes in it.
And it just with the peat, like when peat, just to start with the peat, it's the peat, it's not the peat, the malt, it's not malted peat, it's the cast this char with the peat smoke. And then the finish has toffee, malt, cocoa, oak fruit, and little smoke.
Anyone any questions on this number 2? Probably the best value is kind of peated whiskey out there at the moment. You're talking 35, 38 euros a bottle.
Peat char cask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what, you know, for actually a buck.
Yeah.
You're not going to find any other peated or smoked.
Will you meet today now? All the dry goods are going up in price.
Oh, yeah, no, I've just got a letter from 2 wine suppliers.
Yeah.
An increase next year. Beginning of the year.
They're going to be long letters, I'd say.
It's streamed by YouTube.
Yeah.
That's fast. See the way
What about this whiskey?
it's interactive, like it's all.
No, it's just.
Later on that one. The second time.
That's with them.
Yeah.
Track number 3.
Definitely, yeah.
West Cork Irish whiskey cask strength. So it's a blended cask strength. So it's comprises a mix of grain whiskey, 2/3 grain and 1/3 single malt whiskey. Then it's married together and finished in a bourbon barrel for further 6 months. There's also high proof whiskey with notes of dried fruits and orange peel. So the nose is small dried fruit, balanced sweetness, honey with a mellow touch of vanilla. I suppose a lot of times a kind of a cask strength whiskey would be for the person, or the guy or the girl who's kind of pushed on in their whiskey journey, but as you meant, so says, oh. But it packs a punch.
There's a hit behind that one for sure.
Huh?
There's a hit behind that one for sure.
Taste the vanilla straight away, can't you?
Yeah. So it's a high. So I suppose cat strength. I think if I'm correct, it's between 60 and 65%. Classified as cat strength.
Yeah.
So this is 62.
It's a direct correlation with starving with the release of caffeine, whiskey, and liver disease. You can actually map it. They all walk. People actually whiskey the same way they drink normal whiskey.
Yeah. I mean, like shows and boys are coming back. Like, gee, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
They're going. Let's you must realize the strength of it, like,
They don't.
because it has to be respected.
Yeah.
Tastes dried fruit and orange peel, banana, apple, vanilla, and toffee. And it finished oily with hints of almond, honey, and lemon peel. Huh?
Eric's got a very strong liver.
It's a good night out.
Two of them.
It was a good night out.
Yeah. There's a reason she went to America to find the numbers.
Just to kind of break it out. I think it's gets too much.
I just ask me any question. Yeah. Have a good night.
Yeah. Oh, Carlin, you like it.
Because I know. Which that's the week.
Isn't it?
Huh?
A Monday night.
Yeah.
Coconut pineapple.
As I know Eric's meant to get in here. He's anxious to get going. Any questions or good and bad or comments I can take back to the master distiller and tell him. Second split. Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's a second.
I like the first one.
Yeah.
First one was
Maybe for 5 years. 5 years, yeah.
fun getting stronger. I could feel the strength getting stronger. So let's say.
The cast strength. I suppose one of our things is that we James will tell you, like, all our pieces are accessible, and some people might call them, they're probably too accessible. So it's under 50. You get for around 50 quid in some places.
There's one I don't actually have. But I think Super Value have this in stock.
Cast strength, no.
No. No.
50, under 50.
150.
Yeah.
Obviously, I mean, it's till you try before they're all around 35, 20 euros.
Yeah, it's one of the, I suppose, the pillars of the pies put in place when they started out like that. Any whiskey we made would be accessible to all. So like you'll never see West Cork whiskey going, geez, I'd love to have that someday if I could afford it. It'll always be priced to, yeah. So everyone can enjoy it, not just a few. Let me say that we're going to put the price up in January. Yeah. But not very much,
For now.
I found the middle one there. I think that is, I don't know, 35 years. I think we have that one for 35.
It's 35 to 39.
Yeah.
Like, it wouldn't be.
They're great, but I mean, West Cork got great value.
Is that number 2? Was it?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's actually
There's something that
It's different.
Yeah, it is different.
You get that kind of easy taste of it, like.
the great range of the
The Calvados cats are getting a great reception.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
They're fabulous.
Lovely apple finish off, and it's,
Yeah.
What's the price of 3 bottles? You know, roughly retail.
your pour cask roughly 40, 35 to 38 for the bog oak char cask, and you're under 50 or a little over 50 for the cask. So you just it's very slight from everywhere, you know.
Which one do you drink?
I suppose the bog of char cast was
These are
like
your favorite.
industry, yeah.
See the
So
comments there when the people saying there's some great value for money as well. Just comments there.
And I mean, how did these differ so much from, I mean, you originally these as 12-year olds that were sourced, right? Your own liquid.
It's only, yeah, the 12-year source was, it's what we would bought 8, 9-year-old whiskey, and then just we finished age for a bit ourselves, and finished the 4 sherry cask.
And it's a huge different flavor profile between these.
I just think it's, you're talking 6, 7, 8 years long cask, so, you know, funny. She was afraid the more depth of flavor and all that, you know, going on. But no, they were very popular, and we did 10-year-old was really popular. Just
Drink up.
the last few years since
I know which that way they go.
used all that stuff, you know. So we're on this route now, and we're looking when it's where.
I need a new thing.
As I said, we're just
And it's profits, yeah.
It's because you're supposed
the
to
right thing, yes. So there will be next year, so we'll have to gauge that thing. How much do we have? No, because I see a lot of distilleries nowadays, you know, they release so much to this, so much that market gives none of it. So it could be in a matter of the Irish market is the third biggest whiskey market in the world, so and anything we do, we use
What's the latest update on the warehouses in your recently, which was landing, right?
that didn't go too well. No. It's open. I suppose it's something I'm not really involved in, but I have a demo. I'd imagine a warehouse somewhere else. You know. It's what my favorite, but it's what it look at your shows. I suppose how well we're doing.
You need it.
You need it. Like,
Sorry.
yeah. You not do that's what you're completing your stocks. You know, you need somewhere to. Unfortunately, cats are big, you know, you put 6 9 on a place, so you need massive space. Well,
You doing any questions there for West Cork, for Kevin West Cork?
Was there a limited edition? Does that mean this limited quantity that everybody bought something?
that's, you know, we'll always have it available. Yeah. I'd say that was, I don't know why that was done.
The marketing technique.
Yeah. Marketing guy has to be either fired or paid double.
Also, something no from the fog oak char cask. I don't know if it's with all the carrot stuff, but it's labeled as a cask strength, whereas it's not actually a cask strength. So it's a typo with the actual. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So might become a collector's item, something to look out for. But yeah,
It is if it is labeled that, because so it's 43% ABV, so it's not. Yeah.
marking on.
Oh, that's circular, is it?
There is. Yeah. So.
List of questions.
Don't drink it. Don't drink it.
It's only a trailer.
Huh?
It's only a trailer.
It's a hunt.
We have a question online from Sylvia asking. So there's no plans to follow trends and releases something premium. You have a huge range of stuff.
There's no plans at the moment, but again, that if it was premium, it would be still price accessible. You know what I mean? It wouldn't be €100 plus. It would be in a. You see, if you're talking €80, €90 premium, it would probably be 65, 70. You know.
I suppose to go more premium, you need to have age liquid and you want to use your own.
Yeah, but and that's our
come with value, yeah.
Yeah, but that's our business. Our business model is to, I suppose, sell lots of it. You know, that's premium. Super premium market is. It's intense with the whiskey market. So if you're playing in that, you're playing in a small market, like, you know.
Where is the biggest market? Will be in the US or
US,
you sell it out in the US?
Ukraine, Russia. We sell a lot in the Baltics,
Really?
Lithuania, Latvia.
Yeah.
Big customer out there. We did 140 shops, so an awful lot out there. France, Germany. So we're in another market, but I suppose there's do varying levels of business, like, you know. I suppose they mainly US, but it's a complex market too, you know. And a lot of them are like the Nordics, as going back from Norway, it's government controlled, government led, like, so you apply for the tender, you're approved for the tender, the buyer then gives the shop, people working in the government led shops a taste it. If they don't like it, you're not listed. So it's a lot of markets, you know, you have to kind of do a deep dive and learn all about them to really know how to sell them, because it's complex out there, you know. Not a matter of just getting the market and sell, you have to work at it.
We have a short video here from, so I like them. It's pretty too.
This is not my deal, so this could go wrong.
I don't know how well the audio will show up here. See.
Desperation is great motivation, like, because you know the early days are backs were against the wall, like we're desperate to succeed. Like, as you know, the fear of failure in Ireland is atrocious.
My take on respect would be kind of anybody starting up, respect and look after them, you know.
And I suppose there's a saying as well, a little knowledge is a dangerous thing, and I suppose we never confess to having that knowledge.
Nobody wanted us in this game. Small battles along the way that we dealt with as we went along, and now they have respect for us and kind of up there with as good as what's offering Ireland at the moment anyway.
I suppose we don't say it about ourselves per se, but it has been said that West Cork Distillers is a distillery for the people, by the people.
Very good people around us. That's the key to success, building a good team around you, you know.
I agree with that. If you don't have good people around you, you won't go anywhere, because only so far you can go by yourself.
West Cork is a place, you know, it's got huge heritage, and it's an area that was hit badly by the famine. But because of that, there's a lot of West Cork people living in America. And when they see the West Cork brand, they get excited by it too. Getting text messages and pictures from people, West Cork people that are traveling abroad, and they see it up in places, and they're so proud of seeing it that they send you texts and images. And I think that's better than seeing it yourself.
Company like this just could not come to the stage today if you were doing it on your own, if you were an individual, because if one fella's down, two fellas are up.
That's the fortunate thing about having three, that there'll always be a majority, you know. So, you know, we do have differences of opinions, but two will always agree on one point.
Like, I suppose everybody's main goal is to get the new distillery finished at the moment. And after that, it'll just move on to the next thing. It'll be more warehouses or... of production.
Bringing employment here, I suppose, is the highest accolade you can get, and you know.
So yeah, if one of my sons, two sons, worked in the business, to be nice to leave a legacy after me, you know. So I suppose you wouldn't call it a stroke of luck. There's no such thing as luck when it comes to work. You just kind of make your luck, don't you?
Have a look there. Your own time.
You star on it?
No.
No?
No.
Yeah. Okay. So Andrew here from. Who Who's got sound on this?
Thanks, lads.
Thank you very much.
Okay, yeah, someone's back. Okay, guys, Andrew here from PDWC Society. Just jump on and say hello. Didn't come on at the beginning. We had Kevin jump right in there. Get some whiskey into yourselves to try. We've got a room full of people here. Let's show them on screen if we can. So we've got behind Kevin, duck down, Kevin. So we've got everyone is here. We've got you guys at home. We've got this live stream going. There's a bit of work to get it going. Took a little bit longer than we expected. Everyone's a little bit quiet. They're trying to keep quiet so there's no interference going back out to you guys sitting at home watching. But I'm sure, yeah. Can we get everyone to say hello to everyone that's at home here? No, I'll say a big wave and say hi. So thanks for joining us online. It's the first time any Whiskey Society has done an event where they've done a live event and also had people join online tasting. So it's taken a bit of work to try and get it up and running. We hope it's going okay. Tell us in the comments. Great to have you all here. We've got a couple of prizes that we can give out tonight. If you want to show them on screen here, you can let me get this. So a couple of prizes to give out to people here and also to you guys at home. We'll get through some prizes to show you. If you want to check under your seats, you'll find out if you won a prize. Take it under your seat. You two at home, have a look online at home. I'm sure you've got one at home for you guys. No, I'm only joking. There's no tickets under your seats. Jesus, come on. Huh?
I say they're not.
Seats, my God. But yeah, and if you.
That's brilliant.
We're seat. Your seat.
Yeah. Over the benches for. You want to see the guys at home checking under their seats? So yeah, if you've checked at home under your seat, you send us a comment and let us know. But we do have some prizes, so we'll see if we can get a few of these to give out here. So someone has said if we've won for everyone in the audience. We'll see. We're not sure right yet, right now, but we do have someone has looked under his couch. John Redmond at home has had a look under his couch. Yes, John, we snuck in earlier and we stuck a little JJ Corry bag under the couch. So yeah, we do have a couple of prizes that we're going to give out. So why don't we do some of that right now? But yeah, look, it's great to have everyone join us online as well as here. Hopefully it's something we can do in the future, especially with COVID. I mean, people aren't going to be able to get to events as much or a bit more reluctant to. So at least this way we can offer the option to join us, and for those living further afield as well. So let's see if we can get this. There's going to be a couple of hiccups trying to get a live stream going, but it seems to be going okay so far. Do let us know. Okay, I don't know where that is. What's up here? Rob, will you sort this? I think that's paused. You fix that, yeah? Okay, so. Right, let's see. So we've got a little wheel of names up here. It's got everyone's name who's here. It's also got everyone's name who's at home. So hopefully we'll see who can win a little prize for themselves. We'll see if we can get Rob off the screen. Where are you? I don't even have you. Oh, you're down here. Okay.
Turn this off.
So yeah, Alice Carroll has won a prize. Alice is one of the founders of Limerick's newest whiskey. It is this. It's the Fox's Bow. Look at that labeling. Wow, fantastic. This is from Limerick. Proud Limerick whiskey, Fox's Bow Irish whiskey. 43%, nice 43%. And it's aged in bourbon, Oloroso, and rye cask. So very unique finish. Lovely gift to give someone Christmas time coming up, or to have at home to. But yeah, it's great. It's great to see all this happening in Limerick. Whiskies, what? It's on the raffle. No, I'm taking this home. But yeah, so it's great. It's just something to look out for. Great to have Alice here and her family. So yeah.
That's it.
All right.
That's it. So next up again, another bottle of Baileys.
Oh, look at this. You can have it on the screen. I didn't. Okay, so we ran just a moment there, and Dara, it was you that came up. So I know you brought some people with you. So
Yeah.
it was actually under their name. So yeah.
Yeah, perfect. Congratulations.
Picked a good seat.
Yeah,
Just very convenient there.
So again, another 2 West Cork glasses.
2 more. Okay.
Yeah.
This isn't working, is it? Are you paused again?
Seconds.
How can you hear it?
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, you've got it back
Yeah.
here. Okay, I was trying to be smart and wait for it not to come up. You can just see here behind me. So yeah, next prize is going to Declan Carroll, who's won a prize.
Yeah.
Declan does some work with us with the society here as well, just helping out. Couldn't make it along tonight, so we send our best wishes to Declan.
This one we're going to go with the JJ Corry glass. We're going to go with a whiskey glass set with the stones as well.
Okay, so we're back. Yeah,
Perfect.
should be back. Yeah.
Up to speed, yeah.
Are we going again?
Yeah. So we have the West Cork and we have the whiskey glass set with the stones again for this prize. Second last prize.
Is it going? All right, and this one goes to Paul McGillia. Paul couldn't make it again tonight. He was due to be here with us, couldn't get here.
He's aside
So,
for Paul.
yeah.
Just for the last prize, then again, it's another West Cork and the whiskey glass set with the stones as well.
And this goes to George Hussein. George is also online, so geez, loads of prizes going to people online.
I think that's aside for George.
Just sit at home and get prizes as well. Okay. I'm going to try and fix that now. So we can get rid of this. Okay, so we're back in the room. Yeah. So we've gone through our prizes.
Yeah,
gone through
our prizes, some winners, good selection in between in here in 1314 and at home. And
So yeah, great to have you all here. What we didn't do is we didn't just give a quick intro, which we've been meaning to do. The bar here in 1314 is part of Jerry Flannery's. It's a long-standing bar. It's been in the city for a long time and has a history in the whiskey bonding bars, where Eric from JJ Corry will be able to explain a bit more how bonding process works, how it did work maybe in the past with the bars and then through independent bottlers and bonders, one of which JJ Corry was down in Kilrush in Clare, and where JJ Corry are now based in Curraclare. So as you can see, here's just a little photo of Jerry Flannery's back in the day, where it was under the name of Cronin's. It's going to show up here in a moment. And then we have just a little display of Michael Egan's, who, again, in Limerick City had big whiskey bonding process, whiskey bonding bars in Limerick and all over, really. So we've gone through the West Cork. You have your own slides you want to use, right?
Just to watch what is it?
Okay.
The video just how it doesn't work. It's just
Yeah.
that's nice to do.
This guy? Yeah, and I can pull in yours when you need to.
Yeah, it's signed up.
And great to have such numbers here as well on a Monday night. It just shows you where we're at with whiskey in Ireland. And definitely another first is doing a tasting in person and online. And it presents its challenges, but I've done a couple of tastings in the last little while, but it's just lovely to be in front of people again. It's a Monday night, it's very interesting, but look at the amount of people that are out here on a Monday night in Limerick, it's fantastic. So my name is Eric Flannery, and I work for the Chapelgate Irish Whiskey Company, and we are whiskey bonders. All of our whiskey is traded under the JJ Corry Irish whiskey brand. The company was founded by a lady by the name of Louise McGuan, and Louise worked in the industry for about 20 years, worked for all the multinationals, Diageo, Pernod, Hennessy, and she wanted to come back to Ireland and start her own business. Her dad farms the land in Curraclare. PJ, who's 80, I see him nearly every day. When he's moving calves between the fields, it's a job you could end up doing, is just guiding them in. There 2 weeks ago, he was squeezing calves. I drew the line at that. I said I wasn't going to get involved in that, but it's a family farm for Louise. Louise's dad's on, and she just wanted to do something with the farm. She wasn't interested in farming. She has a brother as well, who wasn't interested in the farm. So she came back to start her own whiskey business. And the idea was Louise was going to start a grain to glass distillery. This is back in 2015. Just started to get the new wave of distilleries at that point. But her eye was caught then on eBay. Like, this is an original old label that she saw on eBay when she was doing her little bit of research as to what existing brands were there back in Clare back in the day, just to get the inspiration to see where to go with the brand. And she came across this bonding label on eBay. So it's a JJ Corry whiskey label. It's an original label, but she didn't know, like, what's this bonding business about? She was 20 years in the industry, and what is bonding? So we as whiskey bonders, we don't have a distillery, and we have no plan to have a distillery. So our business model is we buy wholesale whiskey. So we buy mature stock, or we'll buy new make whiskey spirit. We buy barrels and we put them together and bring them back to Clare. So we have our own bonded warehouse in Clare, or rack house, and we would have whiskies, well, whiskey spirit from 0 all the way up to whiskies for up to 30 years old. And our business model is to create a library of flavors, if you like, in a rack house. As diverse a range of flavors as we can possibly get our hands on from as many distilleries as possible. And then our gig really is, you know, blending and marrying those flavors to bring new expressions to the whiskey market. So that's what we're into. And that's the Whiskey Bonder. So I met Will here a few weeks ago actually, and on one of the upper levels here, there are some old bottles of the Whiskey Bonders here as well. But JJ Corry was a whiskey bonder in Kilrush, late 1890s until the 1930s, when he passed away. But his 2 daughters kept his shop going on Henry Street then until the 1980s. When the family, his last daughter was Bridie and Josie, when those 2 passed away, an auctioneer in Milton Malbay bought the shop, and it was him that had these labels that he was trading on eBay that Louise found and caught her eye. She said, "No, I'm not going to open a distillery. I'm going to resurrect the lost art of whiskey bonding," and that's what we do. So we brought 3 whiskies from the range. We've got probably 5 whiskies in the core range. We've brought 3 to taste tonight. So we'll get stuck in. We've got the Hansen to start with, which is a blended grain whiskey. We've also brought the premium blend in a range, the Gale, and we'll finish them with our age statement single malt. We'll start with the Hansen. We'll cover up the that slide, Andrew, with the details of the Hansen. Sample number 4. So all of our whiskies, well, the ones we have tonight, and we're 46%. They're natural color, non-chill filtered, and just kind of think back to some of Kevin's presentation there. You couldn't get too kind of more contrast and brands here. The numbers that Kevin was putting up there were just mind-boggling for us. We're on the opposite end of the scale completely, in terms of volume. We're tiny, minuscule. I suppose craft and premium is probably the space that we play in. So we talk about the Gale when we get onto that next. That's where we started. But we introduced this blended grain into the portfolio last year. Lovely to be at the stage where we're talking about portfolio development. As I said, we started with one product, the Gale, and it's been an interesting few years. But we've added some brands to core range. So a blended grain category that doesn't exist really. It's either, you know, grain whiskey, pasta whiskey, malt and blends, but we put a blended grain on this because it's grain from multiple distilleries. So Cooley and G&D grain, ex-bourbon. So it is quite light in color, so it's natural color anyway, but the only cask influence here is 100% ex-bourbon matured. We have, yeah, do you want to pop up the slide? Yeah, there. Oh, you're doing that, yeah. So we introduced the Hansen in, I think it was March last year. So we did, COVID had just kind of, lockdown had just started. We did a tiny batch one of this. I think it did 555 bottles. It was tiny. It was a 3 cask, I did say 3 casks, a 3 cask release. So we introduced that. It was well received despite the times it was in. So we decided at that stage then we bring it into our core range. And it is lovely to have a grain whiskey in the core range. Grain is kind of like the, malt is, I suppose, the star of the show in terms of whiskey. Grain is the background, it's foundation, a building block for blends. But we're seeing more and more grain whiskey come onto the market. And this for us really is a celebration of Irish grain. It is the kind of lesser cousin in the whiskey in the things, but there are some really nice single grains out there. We're delighted as a whiskey bonder to be able to bring grain whiskey from multiple distilleries together to bring you the Hansen. So for me, if you give this a nose and have a taste, again 46% ABV. It's a natural color, non-chill filtered. very sweet, and the sugary sweets for me on the nose. Like we're really, this is the toffees, butterscotches, fudge, that type of a flavor profile for this. And we started with a batch number on the Hansen. We had a batch 1 and a batch 2, and I think the one that's in the glass tonight, we dispersed with the batch numbers after 2, and now on the bottle is just the Hansen. And I believe it's the 4th iteration that we got in the glass here tonight. Yeah, so I'll talk a little bit about the content of it and how that is involved with it, but just have a quick note of it. So very sweet, as I said, for me, on the palate, like it's toffee and butterscotch for me, and fudge. Please ask questions that this really isn't for me just to talk at you. If you've got questions, to show, and it's a bit more interactive. That's the way I like it, to be honest. But there's a lovely length in this as well. Nice sweetness in the palate, as I said. It's all export matured. A little bit of the backstory on the product itself then. So the Hansen, that comes from a guy called John Andrew Hansen. He was the local Clare excise man back in JJ Corry's day. He was the guy responsible for making sure that all the duty was paid. He actually got quite friendly with JJ Corry's daughter and ended up marrying JJ Corry's daughter. So it was quite convenient, as they say, keep your friends close, but your enemies even closer. So John Andrew Hansen was the gauger of the time, and he was the local excise man, and that's where that product name comes from. And the excise men back in the 1890s, early 1900s would have been distinguished by the wearing of the bowler hat. So as a nod to that, we have that on the back of the watch.
See the phone?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I'm not looking at myself over there. See that? Yeah. Any questions about the Hansen or Whiskey Bonding or JJ Corry?
Whiskey Bonding, I don't think you explained that. That's a lot more detailed than just buying a cask and then emptying the cask into a bottle. There's a lot more work involved.
Yeah, so I mean, I suppose you've got the distilleries like Kevin and West Cork Distillers. They've got, the distillery, they've got their bonding warehouses, they do maturation, they do the bottling and the whole shooting game. I suppose for us as whiskey bonders, and it's not really, there's no legislation defining what a whiskey bonder is, so that is a challenge. But for us as a whiskey bonder, it's to have our own bond warehouse. It's to acquire our own whiskey, manage our own barrels. And really, once the distillation is done from the distillery, we have everything else after that. In our rack, we've got a rack house. We're maturing and managing all of our own whiskey. We have our own wood program. We, manage our own barrels and that. And we have our own blending room, and we do our own bottling. So I manage that into things.
It's all about the blending of your product.
Yeah, so blending is so there's lots of flavor influences, as we all know, like the whiskey. One of them, is the mash bill that goes into the whiskey at the start. Another one is the shape of the stills and the distillation and the cuts. After that, then you're looking at the wood management and the environment that the whiskey is matured in. So they're the bits that we play in. That's the space we play in. I suppose the independent bottler is the guy that can go to a distillery maybe and ask, can you put a blend together for me? Here's my label. They can put it together for them. It's unique to them, and that's their product, and that's what they bring to the market. As the whiskey bonder, as I said, we're trying to take ownership of the whiskey. We own our own barrels. We buy them under bond. We store them under bond. We continuously taste and manage them. Just after going through a tasting of the entire stock there recently, which is a pleasure. So, we open all the casks, taste those, and profile them and see how they've moved along and how they've aged. Because it's interesting for me anyway, to have got the opportunity to do that at certain points in the maturation of the whiskey, something funky goes on, and you either decide, "Ooh, that's really interesting and want to bring that into the product," or that's not the kind of direction we want to go in. So now is the time to make a decision to maybe change the cask influence at that stage.
But you also, one thing I saw that you also go out and source your own casks.
Yeah.
Which are different from traditional casks. So you brought Louise was in Spain bringing.
So yeah, Louise,
Basic cask.
there, she got the opportunity to go over there. She's been over there a couple of times. I wouldn't mind going over there myself now to see some of that, maybe sometime next year. But yeah, Louise would be quite active.
But you're filling those with different whiskies to get an influence from those casks to produce your own style of whiskey.
Absolutely, absolutely. So it's there's two kind of levels to it, James. Like we do bring in some parcels of whiskey. It's already in cask. It's quite mature. You know, we'll take that in, and by and large, we'll stay in those casks until we, you know, decide we're going to do something different with it. And we talk about that with the flintlock, maybe when we get to that. But you know, where it gets really interesting is we're buying parcels of new make, and then yeah, we're choosing which cask do they go into, and then what direction are they going to go in. So you know, that's really interesting and fun as well. And fun part. Yeah,
You move your cask around, like if you're typical stone white, like if you think like a cask can go to a different temperature, would you move it around to enhance?
The quick answer is no. A lot of the casks get moved around because you know, when we be looking to do a product, we might be looking for a piece of this cask which might be on the bottom row of our 3 rows in the middle.
Yeah.
And if anybody kind of follows me on social media, will have seen the kind of adult Tetris that we do to, you know, move them off one by one to get access to the barrels. But no, we've got a relatively small rack house. It's not like the rick houses in the US where, you know, the weather is extreme and the height of the rick houses are, you know, they're so high, like they're 7, 8, 9 stories high. And there's a huge difference in temperature from the floor to the ceiling. In our rack house, you know, it's stored 3 high, wouldn't be a lot of variation in height. No, it's quite unique, but in our rack house, it's a Dunnish style rack house. There are windows up on the high part of the wall on the south side of the rack house. And Louise put those in, try to, you know, maximize just the flavor extraction from the wood. You know, once the whiskey temperature goes down below 7 degrees, there's not much going on. So that was just an effort to try to keep the temperature above that 7, to try to keep the maturation going. And it's just all about that maximum flavor extraction for us. So that would have an influence, all right, on the maturation of the whiskey, but our 3 high rails, we wouldn't move them around just for temperature influence.
The windows up there.
Yeah, so that's the south side of the bracket. So the danger zone, right? It's still a danger zone. The danger zone, or Louise likes to call them the fairies. Like she talks about the fairy share rather than the English share. But yeah, that's the rack house there. That's the nicest office I've ever had. I come from a background in IT. This is the nicest office I've ever been in. It's lovely to go into the rack house. The aroma is just phenomenal, and it's just a privilege to be able to open casks, taste them, and put product together. So the Hansen, then any other questions about the Hansen? So we use stocks really from our 5-year-old grain up to our 12-year-old grain. And as this has evolved, like we don't have humongous depths of stock. We're not really between iterations or batches or whatever you want to call them. We're not looking really to keep an absolute consistency and flavor of them. What we do want to keep is the quality of the flavor and try to keep the DNA of the whiskey. So what we found is that the whiskey that we've had on site since 2016, which would have been our youngest mature stock, and that would have been G&D grain and malt. Once that got to the 5-year-old mark, the quality of that whiskey with the casks that Louise got in our first fill ex-bourbon casks was phenomenal. Like to compare like a 10-year-old Cooley grain in a 3rd fill or 4th fill cask with a 5-year-old grain in a 1st fill juicy ex-bourbon cask, like just such a contrast, chalk and cheese. So what we found was that 4- and 5-year-old, as it was maturing, the quality of it was far more substantial than we expected and anticipated, which is a very pleasant surprise. So as the batches have been going through, and I had it on the slide there, it said that the 5-year-old percentage was increasing as we were going through the batches. Again, not a reflection on quality, price point, or anything like that in terms of the age of the whiskey. It's all down to the quality of the flavor. And the combination of the good spirit, good wood, has just evolved into a phenomenal whiskey. So that's why that younger whiskey has come in. We've been able to, depend on that a bit more than the older whiskies, and it's brought a lot more flavour. So I don't know what you get yourselves from the Hansen, but I get a lot of the sweetness, the toppies, the butterscotches on my palate, but I get a little bit of the spice in on the finish. And that for me is the first fill casks from that G&D grain that we got in 2016. And that's been on the farm, all of its maturation since 2016. So there's a lovely little spice. It's just a hint, but it's there, and that's from that young barrels. Virgin oak is quite strong and intense in terms of the spices that it brings. But these first fill bourbon casks, they brought a lovely little bit of a spiciness, and we just saw that the cusp of that really between that 4 and 5 year old mark where that started to present itself.
And maybe before you move on, James had a question there on whiskey bonding. So there is a video here we have from JJ Corry. Let's see. Let's try it again.
I'm going to go dancing, but seeing stuff.
In the 19th and early 20th centuries, hundreds of distilleries existed in Ireland. Many of these distilleries did not take responsibility for maturing, blending, or bottling their whiskey. They left this to the whiskey bonders. Bonders were common across Ireland. They were typically pub and mercantile owners who sold everything from tea, ammunition, musical instruments, and of course, whiskey. They sourced their spirit from local distilleries, which they aged in their own casks. When ready, they created bespoke blends for their customers under their own names, just like JJ Corry did. But in the 1930s, the Irish whiskey industry collapsed, and with that, Irish whiskey bonding became extinct. Until now. We've brought back the lost art of Irish whiskey bonding. In 2015, we built a rat house on our family farm in the west of Ireland, where we are creating a library of whiskey flavours from distilleries new and old across the island of Ireland, and blending those to create our own unique house style.
Мне осталось 1 жизнь. Борис этого болезни.
We can put together in a few years' time. So it's
do you buy mature whiskies or do you buy raw spirits initially, and is a spirit to you, or do you get a different spirit from a different distillery? I'm asking about terroir, to be honest.
Yeah, there's lots of questions there. So yeah, we will buy mature stock. So when you get on now to have a pour of the Gale actually, and have a nose and a taste, because just whiskey tastes better when it's drank over stories, and that's why we're here, is really to drink the whiskey. So yeah, we buy mature stock. We could buy a parcel of 3-year-olds. We could buy a parcel of 10-year-olds, 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds. So we buy mature stock. As Louise comes across different offerings or different parcels of whiskey, she might buy that. We also are looking to buy new make. So straight off the still, that might arrive in a container, a bulk tanker or an IBC, and we would take that and we'll put it into casks ourselves, and we put it into our rack house. So it's across the board, new make and mature stock.
Would you find with the new make that get a different take from different?
Yeah, so I mean the lovely.
Or the different they have in their
Well, yeah, of course, there'll be ones we'd be interested in doing business with for sure. But for us, it's trying to get as many as possible. It's diversity of flavor, really, that's really important to us. I mean, a lovely kind of little story of getting the scale of where we're at and what we're trying to do. You know, Glendree Distillery is only up the road, it's in East Clare. So I got the opportunity to go to Glendree and work with Alex Loudon there. And as he was distilling, we were tasting and decided on the cut points specifically for us, which is like, that is that, you know, that's, you know, I get very excited about that. The opportunity to taste at that level, to understand like how much of the hearts you want to let in here, how much of the heads or the tails, and how clean of a spirit or how dirty of a spirit you want to bring in. So like, that's the ultimate, where you're getting that level of control, and it's of that size and scale, where it's, you know, as many of those we can have as possible will just bring, you know, really interesting, diverse products down the line from JJ Corry.
Just a question, you mentioned that you have it's aged from 40 to 30 years. I would assume that storing something for 13 years, that it would be too valuable to actually do.
Yeah, exactly. So, you know, that's part of the challenge of this, and as I'll talk to you about the game now, and you'll see from the blendings as we've gone through the batches, that 30-year-old has got less and less and less and less. There's still a dash of it in this one, but it is, and lots of, you know, people say to us, what the hell are you doing blending in 27, 28, 29-year-old whiskey into a blend? But, you know, when Louise, you know, the Gale is the start of the story, the beginning of the story with JJ Corry, and Louise wanted to make a strong statement as the first product onto the market. It was the resurrection of whiskey bonding in her eyes. And the Gale started out as a 60% malt, 40% grain, a very malt dominant whiskey, predominantly ex-bourbon, but with the top note, that 27-year-old top dressing is ex-sherry. So all of it, the rest of the whiskey is ex-bourbon, and that really old whiskey, ex-sherry.
What percentage would be the 30-year-old?
So at the very start, so batch one of the Gale was 6%. Yeah, and as the batches have gone through, there's been a little tweak of that, and now there's significant fall off of that. And there's the reason for that is twofold. You pop up the slide with the Gale slide, just so people will be able to see the numbers.
Isn't it true though? It doesn't necessarily, because something is aged like 30 years or 25 years, that the whiskey is that good, that you might need to blend in something to bring some fruit back up into it.
Completely.
Too much tannin.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you can get like it's nothing. It's not a statement of quality, that's for sure, James. You're spot on. But yeah, the Gale was really the beginning, as I said, and ex-bourbon, ex-sherry. So the most of the whiskey in it, bar that really old, that 27-year-old as it started in the first batch, is the ex-sherry part. So yeah, so we're not trying to, as we go through the batches, as I said, we're not trying to reproduce the same thing for each of the batches. That's not really what we're trying to do. So what we've decided to do with this Gale is that it's coming from the same stock as we evolved for the batches. So this started out batch one. It was 7-year-old grain was that 40%. That was 10-year-old grain from, 7-year-old grain, 2010 was the year that it was distilled in. And the other two, the malt then was made up of our parcels of 2002 malt, 2006 malt, and the 1991. So that's what the Gale started out as, and very much like have a nose and have a taste yourself. The DNA is still there, as I said, in this batch, but it's very much a juicy fruit bomb. That would be our house style of whiskey, really. Very much the orchard fruits, citrus, a bit of orange in there as well. So that's the kind of house style that Louise wanted to create. And as I said, the batch one was 40% grain, and then like 20, I don't know, it was 22, 23% of 2002, same amount of 2006, and then that 6% top dressing, which is like absolutely phenomenal whiskey. That was the top dressing of it. Now, as we did a batch 2 and a batch 3, because that's as far as we went with the Gale, the third batch was the last batch number on them. The percentages changed. There was quite a step between batch 1 and batch 2 because there was 2 years between them. So all that stock, those same parcels that we used, all that stock had kind of gone on 2 years, and definitely between batch 1 and batch 2, there was a lot more complexity in the finish of the whiskey. That's where it kind of came out, but we're still after that very appley, as I said, juicy fruit on the palate kind of a flavor profile for the Gale. So. Sorry? Yeah. So as I said, we had done batch numbers with Gale and Hansen. Hansen had gone 1 and 2. We're out of stock of batch 2 now with Hansen, and we're out of stock of Gale batch 3. So the Gale and the Hansen now are 2 like generic releases. There won't be any batch numbers on those again. So like I checked, I put there kind of generic the 4th iteration, if you like, of the Gale, and the 5th iteration. And the funny thing is, like when you have your parts of the whiskey that you're putting together for the blend, you don't really know. You can kind of estimate that. That's what we used previously. We do that again, and you put it together, and it doesn't quite sit right. So you may need to adjust the percentages, and we do to get the kind of the flavor profile and the DNA, if you like, of the Gale. So I believe that this is the 4th iteration that we have in last year, because the 5th one, I think, all went to the US. So the grain content has gone up a bit, and the malt content down. The malt has matured on, and that's, you know, the 15 and 19-year-old malt that's in this now. We can get away with the less of the older top dressing because that malt is moving forward, and that malt is bringing along some of the older notes as well, the oaks and the tannins from the wood. So it's an interesting process, just evolving and bringing out the next iteration. But as I said, what's important for us is to kind of keep that juicy fruit bomb kind of a style of whiskey. It's named after, so JJ Corry, you might have heard Louise, or you may not have heard Louise talking about JJ Corry. You know, he was the whiskey bonder in Henry Street in Kilrush. He had sold like hardware. I don't know, did you hear their musical instruments, guns, ammunition, you know, all that, like, and then he would have had Kilrush is a deep port town. You've had barrels of sherry, port, Jamaican rum coming in there off the Kilrush harbour and selling it directly from the shop. I suppose that whiskey bonding started then, where sherry casks are empty, port casks are empty. What's to do with those? Take them off to the whiskey distillery. So at that stage, whiskey distilleries didn't retail their own product. The whiskey distillers, the butchie, if you like, would go into those casks and go back to the shop, where the likes of JJ Corry would age it on then and decide, okay, is that ready to blend? We blend that and then sell that off in the shop, or bottle it for a family like the Vandaliers in Kilrush, you know, a house style whiskey for them. Or, you know, I was involving Liscanner in Egan's 3rd generation whiskey pub up there, Richard Egan, and he had a bottle on the shelf with one of these labels on it. 3rd generation. His grandfather used to have his whiskey sourced from JJ Corry, by the bottle with this label on it. So that's what the whiskey bonder did. They took in whiskey, distilled it into their own barrels, managed their flavors, blended and put their whiskeys together, and it ended up then across the counter as you would here to your punter, or putting together a blend, a house style blend for, you know, the Vandaliers, if you like, in the pubs in the area. Yeah, cool.
Your spirit is going to be consistent from year to year, so that it will change slightly. Be fair to say,
like all spirits in the cask is evolving, right? So it's evolving all the time. Yeah, you'll get certain kind of signature flavors from particular distilleries from a particular cask, and yeah, you're working with that. And I suppose the challenge as you put product together and stuff goes out, you've got to manage stuff coming back in, right? So, talk about that.
You're studying with age for a reason, you know, rivers we tasted through the years or
absolutely
drinks. You know, you look at Blue Spot now, the current versus the previous one. I mean, sure, the difference between all that generally. Now they try to keep them close, but you will find it.
Skill of the blender though is making sure that the core essence of that whiskey doesn't change too much. That you're getting similar flavor structures, similar style of whiskey, but there can be slight differences like from forward or and another element comes along, and that's where Eric.
Yeah, and maybe it evolves into a different product, and if the flavor profile of the whiskey you have left doesn't suit it, and it evolves into something else.
I don't know that much about grain whiskey. Within a few different than.
Not at all, no. So grain whiskey is a lighter style of whiskey, and I suppose like you'd have had there from the Hansen, it's a lighter whiskey, and we've in ex-bourbon casks, grain whiskey takes on the honeys, the toffee, the butterscotch, that kind of a sweetness, in the whiskey. Definitely the malt now, as you get from the Gale here, the malt then brings in a lot of orchard sweetness, orchard fruit, stewed fruit kind of sweetness, biscuity notes. So they're much richer as the orchestra. Like it's a lot more instruments when you start bringing in the malt on top of the grain. So you get a lot more, and that's how blends. Blend started the introduction of grain whiskey, lighter, cheaper whiskey to make. 70%, 60%, 80%, whatever you want it to be, your foundation of the blend. Then you layer on the malt flavors on top of that, then to expand the flavor notes and layer up the flavors. So as I said, I was just saying, JJ Corry was into everything, and he was the local secretary of the cycling club. He did sell and repair bikes, and he also invented a bicycle called the Gale. So that's the background, and just as a nod to that, then we've got the bicycle on the back of the label for the Gale.
What price range are they in, Eric?
Can I hold that till the end?
Yeah.
I would love to, and I'd love to kind of hear your thoughts on favourites, and then I'll give you the prices.
Volume for batches, what?
So volume for batches, okay, so this is as I said, the opposite end of the scale to Kevin. We started out batch one of the Hansen. We did 555 bottles. That was batch one. When we did batch two, we did just over 1,000 bottles. And we have stepped up the volume then as we've gone on to the third and fourth iterations of the Hansen. We've gone into the multiples of thousands. The Gale, when Louise did the very first batch of that, I think she did, what was that? It's in the thousands as well, batch one. As we have evolved that batch, I think the second one was about 2,500 bottles. Again, into the mid thousands then as we've gone through the third, fourth, and fifth iterations. Yeah, so tiny in comparison to where Kevin is coming from. It's a totally different. It's a totally different business model what we're doing. The volume that the guys are making. It's just phenomenal. Like just chalk and cheese. We're tiny. Like Kevin talked about going to 200 employees there maybe next year, and we 5. Yeah. So
I thought it was you have to get down to
Between batch 3 and batch 5, so when you were doing 50-50, the malt bread, you went 60-40-4, batch 50-50 again.
Yeah, it's kind of it's funny when you get to that stage. The Gale is quite complex. It's the most complex product that we have. There's over 30 components that are going into that, and the approach we take is that we take our grain whiskies and we classify those into three levels. So I'd have 3 parts of the grain sitting on the floor, and then with the malts we would create battings of our 2002, for example, malts. We'd create battings of our 2006 malt, and then we'd have our top dressing. And at that stage, we would have done a mini blend and had an idea of what the blend was going to be. But after you vat up all the barrels, things evolve. So then when you take a piece of each now and put the blend together again, it can be different, and it has been in our case. So at that stage, then we look to see, okay, this piece is missing. So where's that coming from? It should be here. So we increase that piece, and we'll decrease that piece, and it's all then down to the flavor profile, what you've got in front of you now with your different vattings before we choose to bring it all together and marry it in our tanks. So it's very dependent on the flavors as we taste them, as we put the whiskey together.
Highly dependent on the age.
Yeah, and I talked about like the very first iteration and the second actually in the case of the Gale, where it was predominantly 9, 10, 11-year-old grains. You know, when we started tasting then the 5-year-old grain that we had on the farm, all of its life from first fill barrels, it was phenomenal. Like, you know, seriously phenomenal. So we started to bring in some of that then because there was more richness in the flavor. So once you do that then, okay, how does that play against the malts now? So do you need to bring down the percentage of the malts to let that flavor play in the blend? There are the complexities of the blender. And, you know, that's what we'd be looking at each time. That's the process we go through. And it would be kind of very live and tactile and dynamic at that stage where we'll decide, yeah, that's where we wanted it to go, or we tweak the ratios a little bit, and now it's where we want it to be. Yeah.
In terms of, I mean, blending, probably works in your favor. You have certain components of blending, you know, a bit of stock management, especially on the small scale going forward. But is that commonplace? I mean, blending that you're having 30 components in a release, you know?
I don't know, I can't really speak for other blends, but like, you know, we have that I would say that's really kind of small, you know. So on the opposite end of things, here's a product where we took 3 casks. Actually, we move on to maybe the blend up. Like that's 3 casks as well. So tiny, and I suppose people that would have followed us on social media, we have kind of two revenue streams, if you like, in our business model. We've got our core range, which we brought here today, but you know, we've done a lot of collaborations as well in parallel, where we do bonders blends, where we collaborate with somebody, very strategic collaborations, if you like, in various markets, and you know, we'll invite them into the rack house, do a bit of custom blending with them, then we'll release our bonders blend under the JJ Corry name. So you know, the bottles that Will has here up on the sea level has, you know, their bonders blends. You know, we do that too for specific clients. That could be again just a couple of casks where it's very specific flavors like that we're after. You know, you taste the cask, it has a specific flavor. You want a piece of that. If the volume is very small in the product, so it's, you know, it's very interesting.
Yeah, we've got a couple of different range up there.
Oh wow.
Chosen is the cheaper of the options as well. That's $6 a bottle.
Wow, that's an interesting little slide where we put that together. Yeah, so the Armada, yeah, so we just recently did the Cyber Monday with Irish malts, and Black Friday, the Black Label there as well. Whiskey tea for, you know, International Women's Day a couple of years ago. Our premiums at the end there, the Battings, which is very special whiskey, really. The 30-year-old Bushman's Malt, and the 27-year-old Chosen, yeah.
That was the one that everyone was commenting about, but 2 years ago, wasn't it?
Chosen.
Yeah, the 31-year-old Bushmills cask which you had.
Yeah.
And everyone wanted it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's great. It's great that you're, I mean, especially small distillers like that, you're happy to be able to say where the liquid has come from, that it's sourced, and where it's sourced from. And
yeah,
that's the thing about, especially about things like this, that you can get that information. You're not going to get that from the bottle because.
You couldn't start, but that was kind of beaten out of us. For anybody that wants to pick up some very early batches, the recipe is on the label. That's very much say that kind of Louise wanted to do. There's a pie chart on the Gale Batch 1, some of the Gale Batch 2s, not all of them.
Would it be fair to say that opposition from names more prevalent producers or bottlers as to the way that Louise wanted to go with her very much? This is where we get it, this is what we do, and this is what we produce.
It's fair to say we made opposition. I'll draw the line there.
Well, it's certainly all the big.
So yeah, it's a
voice now. I mean, the lobby group, JJ Corry, right? It's a couple of the smaller independent bottlers.
Yeah, it's just a angle for a voice, right? Yeah, but yeah, look, it's I was one of the founders of the Ennis Whiskey Club back in 2012. We're going a good 8-9 years, and one of the things that I always find every time we get a bottle from a distillery somewhere in Scotland or wherever else, you know, Sweden, you know, you get the bottle and you'll be looking to see, okay, well, what kind of wood was this aged in? How long was it in there for? What was the influence? What's the story? And it's not on the label. So what you do, you end up contacting the distillery, looking for the story. So, you know, it would be lovely to have that information on the label, and that's where we started. And there was a lot of information on the product, on the label, because whiskey drinkers are getting, you know, more and more educated now. They do want to know what they're drinking. As Kevin touched on it as well, provenance of the story and where everything comes from. You know, I think the world has got smaller with social media and everything being online. So I think the, you know, whiskey drinkers are, as I said, definitely more educated. Look at, we've got how many people here in front of us on a Monday night in Limerick. Yeah. So we do want to know what we're drinking. We do want to know, does that come from an ex-bourbon barrel? How long was it in there for? Or when did you move it? Why did you move it? What's the flavors? These are the things that I find interesting, and you know, that we like as club people to know, right? That's why we're here. We want to get the intrigue, you know, the little details of it. And that's what I know about.
Distilleries that did say they had distilleries that whatever we do is great, because you know they say what they do, and that's brilliant. They're very good at it. There was some distilleries around years ago that maintained the distilleries, and then there was that where's the distillery? But we don't have them. So there was kind of a time when I think that transparency then became more important. That if you have a distillery, say you have it. If you don't have it, just explain what you do, and consumer will be transparent more and be. We're not going to not drink your product because you don't have a distillery. Like, well, tell them what you do and how you do it.
Small group with big control for them.
I think it's like food as well, though. Like you're allowed to know everything about the food you're consuming, so why shouldn't you say exactly? You know, like if you're purchasing something, you should know it's different. You got to know exactly where it's from, what's it aged in, what's quality of that. There are.
Yeah, we'll see. Like it might change.
I mean, the information's out there. I mean, if you do want to go finding out, people do have that information out there. There's some knowledgeable people out there who will tell you exactly where that product's coming from and who's it coming from. Not all to the, you know, the company's benefits, but yeah, but that's what the business is now. It's so much knowledge out there.
Yeah.
And you know, it's great actually.
So keep moving on with the whiskey anyway, because like the last one then is the Flintlock number 3, one of the jewels in our crown, really. You just get on and pour it and knows that there. It's like it's very inviting. It's our 8th flavor, and it's the 3rd iteration. I just love this malt. So the Flintlock number 3, and it's a 15-year-old age statement whiskey. It's hot here. So we kind of went away from our standard label with the Flintlock and stuck with the wraparounds. So we did the wraparound. I think Flintlock number 1, we started with the standard label, and I think for most geos, and then the American market, they got a bit of Flintlock number 1. I think that was the first wraparound we did, and we put the Flintlock pistol on the label as well. So kind of just stuck with that now with the Flintlock, and I think it's probably there to stay. So it's a 15-year-old single malt. It's come from 3 casks. So half of the liquid in this is 19-year-old malt from 1 cask. I think we emptied that cask actually for this, and then the other half, just a little bit above and beyond, 47% and 53. Comes from 2 other 15-year-old casks. So 3 casks, 2 15-year-olds, 25% each, and a 19-year-old malt where that's 50%. They're Bushmills malts and 100% ex-bourbon matured. And for anybody that is following Louise, that she's been out in her end and she's brought back, sourced a lot of really good quality sherry casks for us. And also some big 500-litre sherry butts that actually came from the Garvey bodega, which is recently closed. But I think they're 50 to 80-year-old 500-litre casks. One of them is a Moscatel cask. And this Flintlock number 1, number 2 were just ex-bourbon released, ex-bourbon matured. And, you know, just for this one, it was there. We were wondering what to do with it. So we did the batting for the flintlock, and then we married it just for about a couple of months in the Moscatel 500-liter sherry bottle. So the malt is incredibly fruity, like it's just so inviting, very orchard fruity, as I said. But the Moscatel, then you had the privilege of smelling the cask, like there's some beautiful floral notes in it. And what we found was the 19-year-old malt in this was carrying a little bit of the wood and the oaky notes. And that probably still comes through on the palate of this for some reason. But the Moscatel gave that just a lovely little lift. Just give a lovely floral note into the nose and a little bit of a lift on the palate for the older malts. Nothing too spectacular. We weren't looking for a massive sherry influence with this. It was just a convenience that we did have that Moscatel in the vicinity, and it was at the time we were putting the flintlock together, so it just was a happy.
How's the Moscatel compared to?
So it's very floral and fine and sweet, but not of the PX and the other ones, so kind of sweet where you get very heavy sugars. It's probably what's familiar cherry influence in the Irish market, but it is quite intensely sweet. Whereas Moscatel is it's a bit more floral and a bit more elegant, if you like. So we're not looking for, you know, what's the big Christmas cake influence on this, where we're, you know, it's actually more softer, getting a bit more floral.
I mean,
I think the fact that
Yeah, it's actually really hard to find Moscatel over here.
I've been there, it's just fine, but
It's
it's
good.
Very good wine over here.
it's not you.
Not really, you know. Louise has done a great job sourcing this diversity of sherry casks. Right through the range of sherries that, you know, not a lot of people will be familiar with. You know, P1 and Pelado and Potato, PX are also the Moscatel. So we've got a lovely range now in depth. That's just going to be really interesting over the next few years, how we start bringing the sherry influence to this. Impressive size, 500-liter butts, and quite a challenge to move them around as well. So we've got a lovely kind of pyramid. They're Solera casks. So in a bodega, they would typically, you know, be a lower line pyramid of them. So
Do you want to explain Solera? How Solera means what?
yeah, the Solera system in the sherry where, you know, the start with the younger spirits at the top, the casks, and they draw whiskey from the lower end, but the bit of the younger whiskey is coming down to the cask above it, and it filters down along, and you know, you're eventually making a product from the lower side of things. But in terms of just space and in our rack house, and just because they're just a spectacular site, you know, has anybody seen them, or Patrick, I don't know, where your big sherry butts there when you were there? Like, they're spectacular site, aren't they? As I said, quite challenging to get them in place. It was pretty fun that day trying to move those, get them in position, but they're in position now. They'll never be moved. We'll pump whiskey or spirit in, and we'll pump it out, and we'll just leave them in position because they're beasts.
Yeah, I mean, you guys move them all by hand, right? Just
Just clarify. Eric moves everything by hand. He's got a pump.
There's always a helping hand around with the forklift.
Yeah.
Kind of reorganize the rack house so that one person could move anything. It just takes a lot of adult Tetris, where the entrance way and put down the spare rail, and it's literally get the forklift to the end of the top rail, roll off a bar, roll it off, back up again, and you move them one by one into the Tetris. And then,
I see. You remember all these bottles. So the bottles you see there. This is all done by hand. This isn't a machine or sent out. This is all done in-house, next door to the rack room. I mean, it literally is hands-on 100% the whole time. That's what I love about these products. They are, you know, they're quality products, and it's all done by hand. Boy, the guys working in them. I know you say you got 5 employees there, but 3 of them are actually out in the world as ambassadors.
Yeah, exactly.
You, Louise, and maybe 1 or 2 others helping out on the day.
Exactly. Yeah.
I see Louise spent a lot of time in the US basically.
Yeah, So again, looking at sourcing more barrels is a continuous thing, right? So if you're putting product out there, you've got to be backfilling and with both mature stock and new make and casks. And if you're buying, hundreds or 100 casks, you can get top grade casks paid top dollar for it, and then you're getting maximum flavor. If you're buying 10,000 casks or 100,000 casks, it's a bit more of a challenge. So we're at that end where we're looking at handfuls of casks or 50 casks or 100 casks, and we're looking for the top grade and paying top dollar for them, because good spirit, good casks, we need a lot. Let's let it do its magic. Like,
And our plans then to try and increase the size of the warehouse outside and change the system.
not change the system. We've got a tonnage style warehouse, and it is at its capacity. But we'll build further rack houses on site as well. Yeah. So plans for next year.
Next year.
How many bottles are you expecting to put out next year?
Oh, jeez.
Or
Exactly how many?
What ABV would it be?
How many bottles are you going next year? So yeah, it's been an interesting kind of stepping. It is a stepping stone for us, which is fantastic that the volumes are going up. This year, it was a quite different year this year compared to the other previous 2 or 3 years in JJ Corry land, because we had a very, very high beat rate of Bonders blends in those first couple of years in terms of just establishing the brand. But this year, I've been quite busy at home in Corry with Gale and Hansen volumes, serving the US market. I don't know if anybody saw on social media there. Last week we filled in, I think, our 3rd container with Gale and Hansen going over to the US. So that's kept me quite busy for a lot of this year. Just discouraging those. Huh? So that's been fantastic. That there's a nice stepping stone of volumes for us. It's a nice bit of growth. And we're talking about the core range, so we still do Bonders blends at the volumes of 60 bottles of this or 90 bottles of that or 100 bottles of something else. We're very much playing in that space.
What is the core range? 3 or?
So the core range at the moment, so 3 of them are sitting here. Yeah, so the Hansen and the Gale are kind of core range that we want available everywhere all the time. The Flintlock, which we're just tasting now, is a very limited edition. Will happen once a year at a very, very small volume of bottles. So that's part of our core range. And the missing one tonight for outside of Clare is the Battalion. So the Battalion is part of our core range as well. It's the tequila mezcal influenced whiskey, the first tequila mezcal influenced Irish whiskey on the market. So we did a couple of releases of that. Unfortunately, COVID put a kind of a spanner in the works with our next round of casks that we had sourced in Mexico. So we're a little bit behind with the Battalion in our core range, but certainly we'd hope to maybe Q4 next year to have another expression of Battalion, because that was absolutely gorgeous as well. Lovely herbal notes, green herbal notes, and that it was fantastic.
What was the makeup of that? What was the makeup of that?
So we started off with a grain malt blend, but what we found with the cask we had was that the grain took on the flavors far quicker in a much better way than the malt did. The malt kind of clashed with those flavors. So the first first batch was malt grain, and the second one was 100% single grain. Yeah.
Well, it's actually stunning. The mezcal has flavor comes through, and it's just
So for Louise, that's one of Louise's kind of favorite drinks, spirit drinks. And there wasn't quite enough of that mezcal, so that's where she wanted to get some more serious casks and step up that flavor profile even more. So watch the space, and we'll see if we can get back it. So that would be the 4th in the core range, and of course the Banner blend, which is clear exclusive.
Yeah,
that would be the
good luck with the Banner. I mean, you played a big part in the Banner blend, right?
Yeah, that was the first kind of opportunity I got to blend in house. So to be a whiskey enthusiast coming from a whiskey club and to be kind of stood in the entrance to the rack house and being told go in there and blend me a product for Clare. It was probably the best whiskey experience I've ever had. So it was a pleasure to be able to blend that product, and we're on batch 5. We're on batch 5 now, the Banner blend. First batch was about 168 bottles, and our batches now tend to be about 300 bottles each. So it'll be just for exclusive for the Clare market, the retailers, that have supported us from the start in Clare. They love that. They love, the on trade when we had it, and when it's back a little bit as well. It's great for them as well to have people that it's only available in Clare, and you can go and sample it in Clare if you want. And it's delicious. It's my favorite program because I blended it, and it's the kind of whiskey that I really enjoy. So I really like that. So if we're back again, might sneak a bottle over the border and give you a taste of that as well.
I mean, that's one of the things we want to be able to bring back different brands each time. You're going to see them again. Don't expect it's going to be the same whiskies you see.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a huge, JJ Corry have a huge range of whiskies. Just show them here when you've seen them. Same with.
So yeah, just for that point about the flintlock there and that, then there's a little bit of a backstory behind all the brands, but Louise, when she moved back to Corriclare, they renovated her nana's house on the site, and there was outhouses there as well. So a couple of people that have been out to the farm have seen that. But some of the outhouses, when she was renovating those, they found a rusty old pistol in the rafters of the outhouse, and they had that dated to the late 1700s. That was an old flintlock pistol. So that was just a nod then to that flintlock pistol that was found in the rafters, and that's where the name of that product comes
from. So the point I was making was that you have a huge range, West Cork have a huge range. I'm looking interested to see. I mean, you showed it earlier. We will be bringing back different brands and showcasing different whiskies that they have to offer. And it's great. It's great to see all these different whiskies being put out there. Companies being innovative and just putting their neck out there and try it and stuff. It's great. It's great to see that. So.
And just reminded me there in the picture there that we've got on the jjcorry.com website. We've got some gift boxes on that site there, and we've got a code set up for a 10% discount for you guys for, I think it's for the week. It's Treaty 10. It's a 10% discount off our gift boxes there. So that's
you've also reminded me actually. Let's get this up here.
So Treaty and 10. If you get that for you guys or for the week, I think it's week.
If not, you can come into me and buy it.
Yeah. So these are just our gift boxes with glass sets and that.
But none of the gift sets are great because you get your glass and everything with it.
That's on the JJ Corry.
JJ Corry.
It's also got really, really cool little miniatures with a little bit of ribbon attached.
Yeah, it's a nice little tree.
Yeah, the baubles.
Can I just have a question over here about price points, and just part of the kind of thing we've always done in the Whiskey Club. We don't really get into the prices until I find out what people's favourites are, because price does influence our palates and our wines. I just would love to get a show of hands, like if which one of the three whiskies was your favourite tonight? Three kind of totally different styles of whiskey. Grain whiskey to start, a blend whiskey in the middle with the Gale, and the 8-statement single malt on the end. Just get a quick show of hands if the Handsome was your favourite tonight. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Wow.
The Gale, that was your favourite tonight. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7, and the Flintlock. Oh, okay, don't even need to count. So that's an landslide in on the Flintlock. So price point wise, then the Hansen you get for around €55. That would be our entry level price point. 55 for the Hansen. The Gale 85, but average around 85. Again, when I started with Louise a few years back, €85 was a pretty hefty price point for a whiskey with the age. With the whiskies that were in it, it was still a hefty price point. Now €85 at the premium end is on the lower end of the scale. There's a lot of 3, 4, 5-year-old whiskies on the market for that price point. And as I said, to make up with this is from 5 up to 30-year-old whiskies. And then the Flintlock. So the Flintlock was released in Ireland in 500ml bottles, and the price point for that is €110. So again, it's kind of very reflective of that age statement on the Irish.
How many bottles did that one release?
So there's the Flintlock. So we've just over 1,000 on the label, and that's, you know, in the 500 ml bottles, there was only really about 700 bottles of that. We did bottle a bit of 700 for the American market and a little bit of 750 for another market. So all in all, about 1,000 bottles, James. So again, you know,
Yeah,
it's
and
pretty
that's
small.
one thing of it, so the people out there were charging a couple of £100 for their, you know, 500 bottle pieces. Yeah.
No,
Yeah, I just want to mention, I mean, we do have different discounts available. Irish Malt have offered a discount. We're going to try and support us on all our tastings. So whatever our whiskies on show are, you're going to receive a discount from Irish Malts. Tonight they've said 48 hours. I think we've got a little bit longer, but we have a 10% discount to use on all of the West Cork and the JJ Corry. You go to Irish Malts, use the discount code 3 Tasting. And as Eric has also said, if you want to go straight to JJ Corry shop, is that right, JJ Corry shop?
JJCorry.com, just JJCorry.com.
Okay, so yeah, got that up on the screen as well. And we tell me if the discount code is right.
Treaty 10 for 10%.
Okay,
zero.
Okay.
Yeah. And of course, you know, James and Fine Wines in Limerick as well is a great supporter of ours as well, and you'll get the range there as well.
Eric, in terms of the which their heritage of the JJ Corry brand, and if you're the operator of the Kilbot,
so
and secondly, how did you sort of legally take the brand name and adopt?
So JJ Corry is traded from the 1890s until 1932. He passed away in 1932. So that was his trading time. And then, as I said, he's 2 daughters, Josie and Bridie. They took on the shop and ran that until the 1980s. So the shop closed and finished in the 1980s. Said an auctioneer in Midtown Malbay bought the shop lock, stock and barrel at that stage. And it's through that guy then that this label appeared online on eBay. And Louise picked up the label from there. The interesting part was that shop, they were kind of a family shop that threw away nothing. So there was a huge depth, like Andrew put up a slide there, I think, with some pamphlets and flyers about tea and for this, that, and the other, the rum, and you know, so there's a huge amount of information that Louise came across when she was researching and found JJ Corry, and has provided a lot of the inspiration for the brand then. So, you know,
I did come across one that showed they were selling like ammunition, ammunition, all these strange things. Yeah.
And like that pub that I mentioned, Egan's in Liscannor, well, he had a brown bottle with the JJ Corry label on one side of the room. He also had a green box of tea, the JJ Corry brand, and so
a tea house as well.
Yeah, so experts in flavour and blending, and I was up in Sligo there a couple of weeks ago above in Thomas Connolly's, and you know, they had actually tea containers still behind the shelf in the shop into the bar, and you know, the bonders, you know, they weren't just dealing in flavours with alcohols and spirits. You know, they were also blenders of the teas as well. Yes, they were experts in it.
And I don't know if this is true, but I heard a story that often the blenders kid would buy their, or the bonder would buy the cash and sell the bottle with that. But I also heard it in the distilleries in Limerick, the employees would be paid in bottles of whiskey, and the bottle of whiskey would be used to trade in for stuff from the likes of JJ Corry to get food or goods, and then the shop owner would, JJ Corry or whoever, would sell it on the bottle of whiskey. That way, is there any truth in that, or have you heard that?
It's bartering kind of.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think be sure there's stuff like that.
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Any other questions from themselves?
Just on the tasks that you use, would you have an idea what you'd be looking for task wise, like where it's finding that match that, where you more so kind of looking at interesting things happening in the world and then developing an expression match like that?
Yeah, Louise would be the person really to ask that. She does manage that herself, but like we're always looking for the best quality ex-bourbon casks for the backbone of the flavor profile we have. You know, she went then and sourced some very specific sherry casks and is working with a cooper out there who works with one or two specific bodegas. And, you know, she's gone and after that herself. But after that, then it's, you know, she does like to travel. She would say, like, you know, she's not happy when she's not traveling. So lockdown was very tough, but she does love to travel. She's got a lot of friends in the States. She's been out there for the last month or so, and she'll be looking to source more casks, look to form some new collaborations over in the States for a few interesting products that we'd have coming down the track. But it is a case then of what she'd come across, or if you know, for the likes of the battalion, you know, that was a bit of fate. Really, she came across some tequila and mezcal casks in a cooperage that she was in. Just happened to be. So, you know, you get opportunistic times like that. She's very much a fan of the tequila and mezcal influence. So she said, I'll have those, thanks. So she sent those back. Did she really have an idea, the plan for what the flavor profile was going to end up? No. Who did? Like, there's no whiskey on the market where Irish whiskey gets a kiss off tequila or mezcal. But she really liked that flavor profile. She really liked the kind of history that we had, and the history of, you know, tequila and mezcal as well. She just liked all that. So that's where, like, you know, when you are traveling, you get out there, you come across an opportunity like that, and, you know, it creates the likes of the battalion.
Yeah, I mean, another thing to note is the fact that the females in the whole industry, you know, they're taking a bigger role in all of the distilleries. It's great.
Why not?
Yeah, it's great to see. Yeah. Not in West Cork, we've got the 3 boys.
It's a men's distiller.
Yeah.
There's other distillers on the gym. She leads a big trail there. That front.
Okay, yeah, that's great. It's great to see throughout the industry. Yeah, it's really coming on.
Actually, Louise is pushing that big time. She's been pushing for a long time. Yeah. Oh yeah, no, but then
Anything else you'd like to? Yeah, got another question.
any big projects that went horribly wrong?
Yeah. Not when you're designing a specific project, right? Because that's a totally fucking disaster, right? So, but you will get a cask or two where it's not quite what it was said to be, and as the whiskey ages on, then it's not quite doing what it should be doing. So I think you'll always get that, and you'll always get a small percentage, hopefully. And in our case, it is a tiny percentage, but yeah, you'll get a few kind of dud casks, or, you know, when you taste it, flavor profile isn't quite what it should be, and, you know, that's just nature of the business, really. Really, if you shouldn't have too much of that on our end if you are managing the casks like Louise is doing. So she is going and actually visiting the cooperages that are producing these. She's getting to know and understand whether they are decent casks or not. There's no casks that we're getting that we haven't seen and smelt and known that it's their quality. So, you know, if you can manage the volumes that you have at that level, you shouldn't have too many issues with that.
How long would be finish the purchase?
If you're getting new make, in, is it? Or how long would it be before you discard and use it? Yeah, so it's completely different. This is the freaking magic of whiskey, where you've got the same distillate, you know, into the same kind of wood profile, sitting on a rail side by side, and you open them up, they all taste differently. Like, what's that about? Like, that's just complete bonkers. So that's the beauty of whiskey. As I said, you can have the same distillate side by side, and for whatever reason, that magic, that art, like it take on different profiles. So some you may need to transfer out. Some might fit the profile that you want to blend in. You get to use it. So there's no one answer to that. It totally depends on what product you're doing and the flavor profile of the blend that you're putting together.
Just on the game, it's a proportion of 30-year whiskey, right?
Yeah.
I mean, at what point did you guys take that on? What was it?
So that would be the initial parcel of 1991 that Louise bought when she started the business. So we've had that in our possession since then. So since 2016, and we'd be able to watch that. And some of those casks at that age can get you do really have to watch them at particular times.
So you bought it as a 25-year-old?
I suppose just before my time, really. So it was probably bought as 25. We still have some. We still have that stock. Yeah. In our own bunch. Yeah. So fantastic! Like Louise did a great job again, timing and just a bit of luck, and having the parcels of whiskey that she did get to purchase at that time has served us quite a. Oh my God! Like you couldn't buy parcels of stock that age now for lower than retail prices. So what's the point? So it's gotten so rare now that you couldn't really buy that stock. So when you do come across whiskey of that age, it really is quite rare. Yeah.
We've got just one video. I don't know what it worked again. We can find it and see. Again from yourselves. Just show us the video. On the screen.
Every cask in our library of Irish whiskey has been hand-selected, and we're intimately familiar with the flavour profile of each and every one. When a cask of mature whiskey is added to our library, or when our own casks of new make come of age, we classify them in our rack house according to our different flavour blocks. Small as we are, we'll never have an unlimited supply of a certain cask. As we blend in small batches, we maintain our consistency in blends by always working with the same flavour blocks. These flavour blocks range from spicy vanilla to ripe banana, tropical coconut and smoky bacon. We pull from these flavour blocks to make unique and remarkable whiskies.